The number of educators and school employees landing on a state do not hire registry in Texas is increasing. And after a KXAN investigation exposed how people can exploit the state's backgrounding system, lawmakers are trying to fix it. This week on Inside the Investigation, we explain how one senator is using our reporting as an example of a flawed system.
All right, welcome to Inside the Investigation. This week, I'm joined by our Director of Investigations and Innovation, Josh Hinkle. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here because what we're talking about today, we're making a lot of impact at the Capitol. We've had several stories that investigators put together, including the one we're talking about today, that have really been getting some legislative things solved. So let's talk about yours.
Yes, I mean, this week, the Senate Committee on K-16, usually it's K through 12, but they go a little bit into the college realm. But the Committee on K through 16 Education, they talked about Senate Bill 571. And this bill would basically expand the number of people who work in a school setting that the Texas Education Agency can actually investigate for misconduct.
And just to clarify, TEA can't investigate every person working on a school campus right now.
That's right. And a lot of people in the committee actually, I think, were a little taken aback that that's not the case, but technically, no, they can't.
So my question is, why now? Why are Texas lawmakers considering the number of people TEA can investigate for misconduct?
Well, we'd have to go back just a little bit for a story time, I feel like. Last year, our team got a report about the arrest of an Austin ISD tutor, which sadly, this is not, we get those time to time, stories about educators who are accused of doing things that are, not great. It was an email that was sent out to families at a local high school. The tutor, who had only been working there for just over a month, was accused of indecency with a child by contact. But one of our reporters, it was actually one of our former Capitol Bureau reporters, recognized him. He had given testimony at another hearing years prior, and during the hearing, he actually said that he was about to start a job at the Texas Juvenile Justice Department as a corrections officer.
My name is Isaiah Smith. I represent myself, my credentials. I am, I guess, a student leader. I start with that agency on the 15th.
And so you can imagine our surprise and the way that we work. We're all very collaborative. The first thing we wanted to do was check in with that agency and see if that was true. And we found out that he indeed was a juvenile corrections officer for a time. But more importantly, he was facing some pretty serious allegations from working there too. The agency told us at the time that they had investigated him and then determined that he had had an inappropriate relationship with a minor while working there.
So if he was in trouble with the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, which is a state agency, how did he end up working at a public school campus in the end?
Right. That was the question that we had. We found out that he was actually hired by a nonprofit called Austin Partners in Education. And he was hired as a tutor who then was placed on a local Austin ISD campus. The nonprofit told us that Smith actually didn't disclose that he had previously worked at TJJD. And so you can imagine, you've been a part of hiring processes before, Josh. Usually you're kind of going by their resume. And so if you don't know where someone has worked, you maybe wouldn't think to call some random place up and say, hey, by the way, did this person work there? So that was one issue. They didn't really have a reason to call TJJD, they said, to check on him. But it also highlighted an issue that the state had already recognized. There was really no central registry, no central do not hire search engine where schools and people that are trying to staff for vulnerable populations could just go and search for a person, go search all the state misconduct data and information. And so in a previous session, lawmakers had already approved the creation of a search engine that would combine HHSC misconduct records, DFPS, TEA in one spot for schools to just have one spot where they could search for someone to just have that peace of mind. And at the time of Smith's hiring, it wasn't finished, and we should say it still isn't finished.
So we know you've covered that database quite a bit, and lawmakers have already approved the creation of this centralized misconduct search engine, as you mentioned. But you reported this week specifically that after this story, Senator Paul Betancourt said he wanted to file another bill to close loopholes in the state's backgrounding system. And so why would that need, appear if we have this search engine that's already being built?
Right. I mean, our story uncovered quite a few issues, even with the search engine. So one, even if that search engine had been completed, Austin Partners in Education is still up in the air if they would have flagged this, if they would have caught this piece of information that TJJD had. For one, under the bill, contractors and nonprofits would not have had access to the search engine. It would have only really been for other state agencies and school districts. There's also another snag in the system that our story caught. The centralized registry would basically combine, again, a bunch of do not hire registries that already exist, TEAs, TJJDs, DFPS, and TEAs do not hire registry in particular. It's one that's already public. Not all of them are, but right now you could go type in TEA, do not hire registry. It would come up and you at home would be able to search a name. But what we found in our report is even right now, the man that was featured in our story, Isaiah Smith, who's facing multiple felony charges for indecency with the child, he is still to this day not listed on it. So when Senator Betancourt watched our story, he sent a letter to TEA asking, why is that? And Commissioner Morath wrote him a letter back. And in it, he said, under current law, TEA still can't compel a school district to report contractors. They are required to report certified educators and some other folks, but they don't have to report people who they don't employ at this point. And so he told the senator if lawmakers, added contractors to the current statute, it would actually strengthen TEA's authority to step in and investigate, and if they were to substantiate the report or findings, to actually put them on the do not hire registry.
There's an issue. In my mind, what gets measured gets fixed. There's a failure here, no question. And this person should have never been around young people ever again in their life.
And so that brings us to this week. Senator Betancourt did just what Commissioner Morath told him it might be wise to do, and he put it into this new bill.
And over the interim, my office received a report, for example, from a tutor from Austin Partners in Education that was able to exploit holes in the law that excluded contractors from the do not hire registry. The SB 571 is an attempt to close these loopholes.
So how is it being received by stakeholders? Well,
it did seem to get bipartisan support during this Senate Education Committee hearing on Tuesday. We heard from a woman who we often see come up during school choice discussions, because she actually heads a group that supervises a lot of the Catholic schools in the state. And she said this would make TEA's do not hire list more reliable for them, because if they have expanded authority to investigate misconduct, they would have just kind of an increased assurance that when they're searching on there, that it's capturing more folks, capturing more misconduct that they've flagged. And she asked lawmakers in her testimony to pass the bill with a few tweaks to kind of clarify who would need to be reported and TEA's authority. But she asked also that they fully fund it, because she mentioned, this will be expensive. It'll mean that TEA will need more investigators to take on what we can assume will be a larger caseload.
This bill appropriately covers more than 250,000 personnel in public schools who were not previously covered by our Do Not Hire registry. Imagine that's 250,000 coaches, bus drivers, custodians, Cafeteria workers not previously covered are covered by this bill. So pass this great bill, close these loopholes, and fund TEA to do the investigations needed to keep these predators out of all schools.
So what is the status of the bill now?
It was left pending, which it does happen a lot. And again, there were some errors that Senator Betancourt wanted to fix. So now what we're looking out for is the full copy of a committee substitute that he's going to enter in, hopefully with these changes. And from what it sounds like, it's going to be a much longer bill than what he originally filed. But it did seem like it got the support of his colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats. A lot of that committee hearing was not just focused on that bill. There were some other bills that came up that dealt with misconduct, alleged misconduct in schools. And there's a lot that lawmakers are trying to do to not only strengthen TEA's authority to investigate, but also to compel school districts and school leaders to report when they're suspecting that there is misconduct, including, I think, a fine that they're interested in that could be up to $10,000 for a superintendent who doesn't report within a certain time frame.
Well, Kelly, I just have to say a little bit of bragging on you for a minute, because this is really exciting that a bill that is sparked by your reporting has made it to this level in the legislative process. And if you don't follow Kelly's reporting, you should, because she is uncovering things like this on the education beat on a weekly basis. And I think that it's something that a lot of parents, a lot of students, a lot of teachers out there want to know about. So follow Kelly Wiley, everyone at home.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. No, it's really cool to see lawmakers take note of our reporting, your reporting, investigator Matt Grant's reporting. It's cool to see that people are watching and listening, and that the stories that we uncover could have an impact. And guys, if this is the type of reporting that you like to see, come back to us, listen more. We appreciate those of you that are listening and watching. Don't forget to join us next Friday at 10:30 for another Inside the Investigation. You can also listen to us on KXAN's new investigative podcast. Is highlighting our award-winning team's latest reports exposing corruption, safety concerns, system failures across Texas. The podcast will feature audio versions of our weekly Inside the Investigation discussion with the journalists working on those stories. It's available wherever you get podcasts. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Thanks again for having me.
See you guys next time.